What if the most significant economic battle of the 21st century wasn't about weapons, but about trade? What if one decision, one tariff, one policy shift could change the balance of global power? The United States, one of the largest economies in the world, is deeply reliant on imports across critical sectors, ranging from energy and raw materials to food, beverages, and skilled labor. International trade has been a fundamental pillar of the U.S. economic structure. However, under the Trump administration's America First policy, this framework faced notable challenges. Through tariffs and trade restrictions, the U.S. sought to reduce dependency on foreign markets, affecting both allies and adversaries, including Canada, the European Union, and China. But here's the real question. How does this trade war reshape global power? What are the unintended consequences? And is the U.S. prepared for the fallout? While the goal of protecting domestic industries aligns with nationalist economic sentiment, it often underestimates the complexities of interdependence in global trade. The U.S. is not only reliant on imports for consumer goods, but also for essential commodities such as crude oil, rare earth elements, electricity, and raw materials vital for industrial and technological sectors. Additionally, skilled labor and innovation, often sourced from international talent, contribute significantly to the country's global competitiveness. Let's break this down. Canada, a longtime trade partner, is now considering retaliatory measures beyond counter tariffs. These actions include restricting oil and electricity exports, both of which play a substantial role in the United States energy supply chain. Given Canada's status as the largest energy supplier to the United States, such measures could have widespread consequences. The numbers speak for themselves. In 2024 alone, the United States imported approximately $129.5 billion worth of energy from Canada, including 1.46 billion barrels of crude oil valued at $116.8 billion, 2,701 billion cubic feet of natural gas worth $10.8 billion, 37 terawatt-hours of electricity worth $1.85 billion, and 10 million pounds of uranium valued at $0.4 billion. Crude oil constituted the largest portion of these imports, underscoring Canada's role in United States energy security. Now consider this scenario. If Canada halts these energy exports, the immediate effect would be a sharp increase in energy prices in the United States, particularly in states that rely on Canadian energy sources such as Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. The impact wouldn't be limited to just energy costs. Higher transportation and production costs would ripple through industries like manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. This would create a paradox. While tariffs aim to boost American self-sufficiency, they could inadvertently increase reliance on other foreign suppliers or drive up domestic costs. Now, consider this scenario. If Canada halts these energy exports, the immediate effect would be a sharp increase in energy prices in the United States, particularly in states that rely on Canadian energy sources such as Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. The impact wouldn't be limited to just energy costs. Higher transportation and production costs would ripple through industries like manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. This would create a paradox. While tariffs aim to boost American self-sufficiency, they could inadvertently increase reliance on other foreign suppliers or drive up domestic costs. The response from Canada is growing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has stated that nothing is off the table when it comes to retaliatory measures. One major consideration: restricting critical mineral exports. Canada supplies roughly 25% of the U.S.'s critical mineral imports, including cobalt, nickel, and lithium, materials essential for battery production and clean energy technologies. In 2024, Canadian nickel exports to the U.S. were valued at 1.6 billion CAD. Restricting these exports could disrupt supply chains, forcing American manufacturers to seek costlier alternatives. The auto industry, for example, could be severely impacted. Electric vehicle production in the United States relies heavily on Canadian-supplied lithium and nickel. A disruption in this supply chain could slow down production, increase costs for American consumers, and even hinder United States' progress toward clean energy goals. This raises an even bigger question. Could a trade war with Canada push the United States to become more dependent on suppliers from countries like China? Ironically, a policy meant to reduce foreign reliance could force the United States to turn to its biggest economic competitor for resources it once sourced from its northern neighbor. Beyond tariffs and export restrictions, Canada is also exploring options such as excluding U.S. companies from bidding on government contracts, affecting industries like construction, technology, and defense. Canadian government procurement exceeds 200 billion CAD annually, meaning this exclusion could significantly shift trade dynamics. The retaliation is not just economic, it's political. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has announced an early election, framing U.S. tariffs as a direct attack on Ontario's economy. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has vowed strong retaliatory actions, emphasizing the necessity of strategic countermeasures. Public sentiment has mobilized in response, with initiatives such as the Canada is Not for Sale campaign gaining traction. Markets are already reacting. The Canadian dollar strengthened by 0.2%, recovering from a 5-year low, reflecting investor skepticism over the likelihood of the proposed tariffs being fully implemented. Similarly, oil prices saw marginal increases, given the role of Canadian exports in global energy supply. But let's take a step back. This isn't the first time trade tensions have escalated between global powers. The US-China trade war saw similar retaliatory measures, with tariffs triggering a domino effect that disrupted global supply chains. The key lesson? Trade wars rarely produce clear winners. Instead, they create prolonged economic uncertainty, force industries to adapt in unpredictable ways, and often lead to unintended dependencies. So, where does this leave us? Cutting or restricting oil exports would have significant economic and political consequences. States such as Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, heavily reliant on Canadian crude, would face energy supply disruptions and rising costs. Canada, however, would also experience economic repercussions, particularly in Alberta, where crude oil exports contribute substantially to provincial revenues. Looking at the broader picture, escalating trade tensions risk undermining the framework of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Given that US-Canada trade totaled $1.1 trillion in 2023, prolonged disputes could introduce further economic uncertainty. At the core of this issue is a fundamental question. Can a nation truly isolate itself from global trade without incurring serious consequences? The global economy is more interconnected than ever before. Attempting to untangle decades of economic interdependence is not just a political maneuver, it's an economic gamble. Ultimately, energy interdependence between the US and Canada underscores the complexity of imposing unilateral tariffs. Electricity exports from Canada have been instrumental in stabilizing the US power grid during peak demand periods. Any disruption would not only raise costs but could also trigger supply shortages, particularly in regions reliant on Canadian hydropower. More broadly, increased electricity costs would impact industries, raising production expenses and ultimately passing costs onto consumers. Manufacturing, agriculture, and technology sectors could see operational strains, potentially leading to job losses and reduced economic growth. So, what happens next? Will Canada and the US find common ground, or is this just the beginning of a new era of trade conflicts? One thing is certain. The stakes are high and the world is watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We value your perspective. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.